Here.
I think I did see Lunkin on there. So approval of the agenda, we're going to move a little bit around. We're going to change the order of the report. So the facility assessment report will be moved up just after the superintendent's report. So that'll become 5A, and then kids kicking cancer and the hero circle will go to 5B. And then the extended COVID-19 learning plan will be 5C. Any other changes to the agenda or questions about the agenda from members of the board? Trustee Goodfriend?
Yes, Mr. Hoyt, is there something with the sound? I'm having a very difficult time understanding what you're saying at all.
Okay. I'll try.
You know what? We are live. Let me make sure the broadcast is muted. So.
Any other changes to the agenda or questions about the agenda? Okay, is that any better?
Fair.
Yes.
Okay, we'll try that. Thank you for letting me know. If there's continues to be issues, we'll take it from there. So any questions about the agenda for members of the board? Trustee Goodfriend?
I have one question, and I think it should be, if you allow me to do it under personnel action. I have one question.
Okay, so did you want to move the personnel actions off of the consent agenda then?
If that's what we have to do, it's really a simple yes or no.
Okay. Would you like to ask the question now before we move on?
If you don't mind.
Go ahead.
I just want to, Dr. Hitchcock and Carol, if they could tell me or tell the board, all the persons that have a new hire or change of status, if they're all certified teachers. The new hires as well.
They are all certified teachers. I'm happy to say there are a few of our current teachers that are on a permit. So that means that they are working on a certification. And so we're able to put them on a year-long permit, but we are certified or properly permitted.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And Carol, in the policy updates that we did last year, one of the things that we asked for with the personnel actions is that there be a list of qualifications for each position, and that we have a checklist to say that each
I
thing
can't
is.
understand them.
Is anyone still not coming through? Okay.
Yeah, you're real muffled.
Yeah, you're muffled, Mr. Hoyter.
Is this better?
Yes, a lot better.
Better.
All right. So Carol, in our policies, when we updated them last year, we asked that there be a report generated with new hires to show each qualification that's needed for and certification for each position, and then just a checklist that says that the HR department is certifying that this has been met. Can we? I know it's not something that we've been doing necessarily, but maybe that's something we can look at so that we know that all those things are in order going forward.
So just to be clear, moving forward on the personnel reports, you're asking for the certification?
So it could either be on the personnel report or it could be a separate report. It's just to make sure that the board can be assured that for all the positions that we have, that the people are properly credentialed Because we've had that come up in the past where the board has approved before you were here, where the board
So
has
there-
approved personnel actions and then found out after the fact that some of the credentials weren't in order.
Right. So that can easily be done. Part of our hiring process is to make sure they're credentialed. There's with the one permitted teacher where we might have to flip-flop the grade level because the certification's no longer required, but their certification has to meet their grade level. So that's some of the tricky stuff that we're working on. So if you look at like Miss Kane is the dance teacher. While she is very well prepared to be a dance teacher, her certification right now permit is K8. She's hired at the high school, and what she's doing is looking at the certification for the high school level as well. So worst case scenario, we would have to flip her to the middle school because she's K8 endorsed. So those things are looked at with great scrutiny. And I'm happy to make a column for you that shows that if we are having trouble filling a position, then or if we have a long-term sub position, we look for certification even in our long-term subs. And then if we can't meet the credentials, then we put them on permits, which is through the state level and allowed to do. And we've had to resort to some of that in the past. But I love your question because I think it's important, and it's why we created a very robust hiring process. So all of those checklists are done at all levels. So I appreciate your question on that. It's important for our kids.
Yes. All right, thank you. So we were looking at the agenda. Are there any questions from the board about the agenda in order of business? And again, we're going to move around some of the reports. So the facilities report is going to be moved up to the top, and then after the superintendent's report. So with no objection, the agenda is approved. And we move on to the consent agenda, and we're going to be removing the I'm sorry, we're going to keep the personnel actions. Are there any? So the consent agenda covers minutes and then the personnel actions and personnel action addenda. Are there any items on the consent agenda that any member of the board would like to remove from the consent agenda? Okay, I don't see any. So the consent agenda we will just go with a voice vote on the consent agenda. So board members, please make sure you're unmuted. All in favor of approval of the consent agenda, say aye.
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 Opposed, say no. The consent agenda is approved. And that brings us to presentations, and we're going to start with the superintendent's report.
President Hoyda and members of the board.
I'm sorry, Dr. Hitchcock, we're getting background noise from someone's TV, it sounds like. If people could please make sure they're muted. Thank you. Go ahead, Dr. Hitchcock.
Okay, thank you. First, I would be remiss if we didn't acknowledge the loss of 3 of our students this week. We lost a senior student, Darrell Blackman. He attended Oak Park High School, OPFI in the past. Jakai Garrett, he also was a student at Oak Park High School. He attended Key, OPA, and OPhi in the past. And we also unfortunately lost Rain Henderson. She is a 10th grade student, and she attended OPA, OPhi, and Oak Park High School. She was entering Oak Park High School this year. I would like to first acknowledge that Rain Henderson's funeral / memorial services are to be held in Ohio, but Darrell Blackman, the viewing is September 30, tomorrow, and the funeral is October 1st, both at Chloral Funeral Home in Detroit. On Friday, October 2nd, and Saturday, October 3rd, are the funeral and viewing for Ja'Kai Garrett. His funeral is at Christ Church in Southfield. All three students had what was primarily a student-led vigil, and there one student at his home, another two students in the park. So their peers were able to acknowledge their loss. But I would like to offer to the board that we take a moment of silence to honor Darrell Blackman, Ja'Kai Garrett, and Rain Henderson.
I'm sorry, Dr. Hitchcock, to interrupt you. There's one more student. I thought there were a total of 4 that passed.
I'm not aware of a fourth student. Are you aware of a fourth student?
I'm sorry, was it 2 from the, I heard you say the 2 with the visual, and then Ray, the young lady whose funeral was yesterday, but I thought there was a graduate that graduated in June.
Certainly, there's a graduate that graduated in June.
Oh,
I was not planning to necessarily acknowledge that student because there are students, sadly, that could pass away at any time that have graduated that we may or may not be familiar with, but
okay, understood.
we can certainly acknowledge him if you would like to say a few words, Ms. Corcoran, about that student.
No, actually, I didn't want to. I just wanted to know if I didn't know you wasn't recognizing, or for those that had graduated, but just in June. But I mean, the young man, I did know him. He was well liked by the students and the teachers. He attended Oak Park High School, and he was tragically taken away from this earth at a young age. That was it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So can we agree to a moment of silence for the loss of our 3 current students, as well as the loss of 2020 graduate Yasir Bohim. Thank you. With the loss of our current students, I wanted to acknowledge some of our staff members who played a critical role in supporting our students, who certainly have been grieving over this period of time. I want to publicly thank and acknowledge the Oak Park High School administration, as well as the social emotional support staff that includes counselors, psychologists, social workers, and some of the staff members that really stood out and jumped to action right away are Ms. Martin, Mr. Rocho, Ms. Peterson, Ms. Lewis, and Ms. Gambley. We had support staff from all over the district come to support our students on Saturday. We learned this information early Saturday morning, and by Saturday afternoon, we had a team of people, staff members at the high school, ready to support our students who were grieving and support our staff members. I also want to thank Mr. Admission, who right away, when we called to explain that there had been a tragedy, was very supportive of us getting as many staff members as possible into the building on both Saturday and again on Monday and a couple days after to support the students and the staff for as long as we needed. So we appreciate that. We know that coming on a Saturday with very little notice is difficult, and it just speaks to the amazingly dedicated staff that we have. Further, there were 2 staff members, Mr. Rocho and Ms. Biederman, who also went to the hospital to help support the families with sharing this really upsetting information. So not only do we want to keep the students in our thoughts and prayers that we lost, but we also would like to keep the students who were injured in that terrible tragedy and their families in our minds as well, and hopes for a speedy recovery. Additionally, we have just a couple things on the calendar. October 9th, we have professional development for all staff. We're very excited about the collaboration between the teaching and learning department, as well as with several teachers who are working together to ensure that we have really rich and meaningful professional development for all of our staff on that day. So I just want to thank everybody who was involved in that process. Also would like to acknowledge that October 9th progress reports are to be distributed. We just want to remind parents that parent-teacher conferences is also scheduled on our tentative calendar for October 9th, and encourage all parents to seek out the information and to follow up with the information that's being sent from school principals about how they can get in touch with their teachers during that time to have conversations with them about how things have been going online. So I think that is all that I have to share. I will also be spending a little bit of my time or giving a little bit of my time to Kids Kicking Cancer, and we'll turn that over to Rabbi Goldberg when he is available.
All right, thank you. Any questions? Do any board members have questions for the superintendent about her report? Trustee Smith? Do you have a question?
Oh, no, I didn't. Thank you, Dr. Hitchcock.
Okay. I don't see any other board members with questions unless I'm missing someone.
I do.
Trustee Bailey.
Yes, I just wanted to know, Dr. Hitchcock, you said September 30th is a viewing choral.
You're on mute, Crystal.
Oh, yeah. I had a question about the viewing choral funeral home.
Mhm.
Oh, is that at 6 o'clock, or I didn't hear a time, or is it all day?
From 5 to 8.
Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Do any other board members have questions for the superintendent? Okay. So we move on to the facility assessment report. Steve?
Thank you, President Hoyta, members of the board. Tonight we are here to show you the progress and really the culmination of what's been going on since February. It's hard to believe it's been 7 months plus since we started this facility assessment, and slightly interrupted by COVID, obviously, but just slightly. So tonight we are here to present the results of the assessment. And this is a quick PowerPoint presentation I will share with all of you, probably through board books, the whole 80-page facility assessment, if that's something you would like to see. And it's extremely thorough. We're just going to show you a summary tonight. With me from Plant Moran Cressa is Robert Stempian and Lisa Pitt. Paul Wills was not able to attend. He is actually with another school district tonight who's doing something similar. So I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to have Robert start out, and then I will take over as we go. So I'm going to, hopefully you can see my screen right now. And I will turn it over to Robert.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Next slide, please. This is our agenda for this PowerPoint presentation. We've broken it down into 8 sections. The first section, we're talking a little bit about how COVID has impacted how our buildings are designed and maintained. We've also have an update on your sinking fund, the status of your sinking fund program and what capital improvements are being addressed. We also have an enrollment perspective of this basically is a snapshot of how student enrollment is trending in Oakland County. And then utilization considerations, which are basically your Oak Park School District enrollments and what type of trends we're seeing with that. And also, as Steve mentioned, we have a 10-year capital plan that we put together for your facilities and your technology needs. This is really a roadmap for the next 10 years, looking at the condition of your existing buildings, your sites where these buildings are located, and also technology needs associated with your schools as well. Then Steve will probably get in more depth with the funding sources and funding considerations to help with this capital improvement plan. This would be financing outside of your general fund to address these large capital needs for your district. And then also we'll have a slide that speaks to schedule considerations, things that we've done up to this point since February, and things that we need to address going forward for the capital improvement program. And then of course, there's the last slide is the future cases. This is additional information needed to finalize the bond program report that we put together, and just to put the bow on it. There's still some outstanding things that we need to do to kind of button things up, but we're about 90% there. Considerations for the district. These are COVID impacts, things that you're probably experiencing now with how to address the classrooms, furniture needs, logistics, student occupancy adjustments, and associated COVID impact requirements set forth by your school district and the county. Also, how COVID impacts your IT requirements as far as your hardware, software, infrastructure, and support staffing. The big question that we always get is, how does your heating and mechanical systems get affected by this COVID, and what type of impacts do you see with that? And a lot of it has to do with the filtration system that we have on your mechanical systems that I believe Steve Burnett has been addressing with his work in the district to help with putting in new filters for your existing mechanical systems. But you're, I guess, set up with an existing system for your buildings that were probably put in place several decades ago that really are limited as far as what the capabilities are, but we're addressing them to the best of our ability. And then, of course, grant funding and general fund budget impacts, which all of you are quite aware of. The sinking fund update that we just want to briefly touch base on. You have a sinking fund program that is basically for the next 20 years out. This is basically 3 mills, which generates about 1.2 million annually. And I guess the concentration of the sinking fund expenditure is to make sure that your buildings are warm, safe, and dry. This is, addressing roofs and windows and exterior elements for the buildings. Also site amenities and sidewalks, parking lots, exterior lighting, playgrounds, windows, doors, and also some interior spaces as well as being addressed with the sinking fund. This is a snapshot of looking at your enrollments in Oakland County. This is back from 1990 all the way out to 2018. And you can see that there's a steady decline in enrollments of live births and enrollments that are affecting schools in Oakland County. The live births back in 1990 was around 17,000. And if you see how it's trending to 2018, it's about 13,000. So there's a 4,000 birth rate decline from 1990 to 2018. So that also impacts how schools are are addressed as far as, the size of schools and how we address room utilization as well. This is a snapshot of your district, kind of looking at, the enrollments and how they've kind of declined over the past years. Oh, they start to plateau out beyond like 2019 to 2029. But there's a leveling out, but there is a decline from the past years, and we've kind of addressed this in our report that we've put together for you. And this is just an analysis by cohort. Your grade divisions are pre-K 5 in the elementary school levels, 6 through 8 on middle schools, and 9 through 12 at the high school. So mentioned before, we put together a facilities and technology assessment report. It's a very robust 10-year plan looking at all your buildings. That work was completed since February. We, as Steve mentioned, there was a little lull there with COVID impacts that put the brakes on for a little bit, but we geared back up, walked all your buildings. You have about 850,000 square feet of buildings that we walked. I walked them with both Steve Barr and Steve Burnett doing an analysis, along with the help with Lisa Pitt from our office as well. And we put together this very robust, comprehensive report. So we've completed our enrollment projections, our utilization studies, our facility assessment. We met with the principals of each one of these buildings to kind of explain our process and go over the report in their particular section of the report that addresses their buildings. And then there was a technology assessment that Steve will probably talk a little bit more about as well. This is just a summation of our findings. We've prioritized the findings into 3 different categories. Priority 1, which are critical needs, deferrable maintenance, which is priority 2, and a property enhancement, which is a priority 3. You can't do everything at once, so we kind of put it into the most critical elements and into a prioritization of need. If you were going to look at, addressing all the issues in the district, it would be about $126 million. We've consolidated that down for your 9 buildings into about 80 million. We still have some work to do to bring that down to around a $60 million range, but that's a part of our work that we're looking at going forward in the next couple months. If you can see that the square footage of priority 1 needs for each one of these buildings, it's depicted in the middle column, and the cost per square foot is roughly about $100 per square foot for each one of these buildings. So they're right in the same bandwidth for each one of these facilities as far as need. A lot of it is addressing a multitude of different items, which I believe is shown on the next slide. This is kind of a pie chart of need for priority 1, which compartmentalizes it into different categories. The large orange section you see in the upper right-hand corner, that's for interior renovations. That could be your flooring and finishes, restroom renovations. All your restrooms are basically need upgrading and to become more ADA compliant. We also have mechanical, electrical, and plumbing needs, which are in the lower right-hand section of the pie chart. A vast majority of the needs are mechanical and electrical and plumbing related for your buildings. Since they were built back in the 50s or 60s, and they've really exceeded their life expectancy for some of these systems that are in these school buildings.
I'll take over from here. So you have different ways that you can get funding for capital needs. You have a general fund, obviously. There's a sinking fund, and it's kind of a strange term, sinking fund, but it's just really a fund that is similar to a bond, but it's a recurring millage, in this case for 20 years. And you can also use it for repairs. You can't, let's say you're doing some repairs of roofing at the high school, that would go through a sinking fund, but a minor repair could not go through a bond. So we have almost 3 mills. It's rolled back slightly every year for Headley. We currently are just shy of 6 mils for our bonded debt. Our last bond, as you know, was 2008. And I would contend that that's somewhat problematic, that we've gone 12 years without a bond, which is one of the reasons that we need to really get to work on some of the buildings that we've been working on, that many projects the board has approved in the last 7 or 8 months. Our millage rate will start to decline in a year if, or next year, if a bond does not occur. You cannot, for lack of a better phrase, you can't hoard fund balance or keep a big piggy bank of fund balance in a debt fund. There's a cap to how much legally you can maintain. So if we don't have something else to backfill the debt that's falling off, then the rate will naturally go down. You'll see that in a moment. And just like most communities, there is good taxable value growth. We've seen a very good surge in the last several years. As you know, and we've spoken about doing a potential bond election in May of 21, and let's just show you why. If you look at 2020, if you can see my mouse, or there's that square around the 5.98, we've been about 6 mils for a few years. And what happens is we are legally allowed to or required to levy the amount of mils necessary to pay off our mortgage payment, which is principal and interest. That's our equivalent of a mortgage payment. Our mortgage payment starts going down because our balance starts going down. So this next summer, our July tax bill, if nothing changes, the tax bill goes down on the debt portion from 5.98 to 2.4. It has to go down. So what can we generate in terms of revenue for this, theoretically, this 3.5, 3.6 mils going forward for more years? That generates approximately $54 million. So we don't know exactly where it's going to land. Of course, we don't lock in rates like a mortgage that far in advance, but if it was today, we'd get about $54 million of capital funding in a bond issue and leaving the tax rate at 5.98 mils. So it doesn't show as a tax increase. It's really saying it's the same rate going forward. This is one structure we work with our Baker Tilly, who's our financial consultant, 3 different ways, or a way you can do this with 3 different series. Just like you might have a line of credit for your house, you don't take the money out till you need it and you're going to spend it. So we have a kind of a structure here of how we would generate $54 million. Again, we would add sinking fund money on top of that. So it would be 60 million of projects that we could do, including technology and other capital improvements. And again, there would be no impact on the tax rate that a Oak Park taxpayer would be paying. Historically, what's happened over the last 8-9 years is those school districts that do not have a tax increase, they successfully pass their millages 92% of the time. Those that have a tax increase or millage increase are 58% of the time. So I'll just go back to this for a second. If we did an election, if the board decided to not do an election in May, but did it after June of 21, the ballot language would then say it's a tax increase. It would say it's tax increase versus no tax increase. And it has a significant impact on what typically happens in elections. Again, communities are usually very supportive when there's no change in the taxes. So our timing is, and again, you've seen that we've got a lot done already, from enrollment projections to the facility assessments, meeting virtually with all the principals. We're giving you updates. This is the most recent one today. We're doing various financial modeling options with our financial advisor that I talk to often. In the next few months, we would draft up ballot language that would come to you for approval in January. In the meantime, we have to meet, we have a meeting scheduled on December the 7th this year, likely virtually, with the Department of Treasury. And we have to go through a pre-qualification application process. And they have to approve this paper, the projects that we're putting in for the ballot language, to be approved on the ballot language. So that is, there's a lot of work to do. We're in a great place, but we're finishing the technology assessment that will likely come to you in some fashion by the end of October. We just had our second steering committee meeting today, and that will really wrap up the data that we need. We still have to narrow that 80 million that you saw earlier down to a more manageable number. So we have to move some projects around. So likely in January, we'll ask you if this is something you're interested in to approve the ballot language. It would then go to the city clerk, and then there would be information period for 3+ months to inform the community and all the constituents of what this bond is, and the fact there really hasn't been one in 13 years, which is about 6 years too long. A few things we still consider is what will the Freshman Institute be used for going forward. We'll have some money set aside as a placeholder for that. We do have plans, as you know, we just put them on hold because of COVID, to turn Lessinger into a pre-K building for GSRP and Head Start. That I expect will still be occurring. We've spoken about the capital bonds or the capital bond programs, and let's move forward. So those are the questions, or those, excuse me, that is the presentation from Robert and myself. I want to thank Robert, Paul, Lisa, and Steve Burnett for walking the buildings. He got to get here for the last couple of buildings, and it's a lot walking, 150,000 square feet, walking in just about every classroom. So if you have any questions, this is just an informational report. Any of us are happy to answer your questions. And we'll be giving you updates either in a Friday update or probably in November, where we bring you back everything put back together before we go to Treasury in December. That's all we have for you tonight.
All right. Any board members with questions? Trustee Klein.
Yeah, Steve, first off, it's great to see all the construction that's going on in the district, especially the parks. Open for the public. It's really phenomenal. It's really loving it.
Trustee Klein, we're having trouble hearing you.
You just faded away.
Oh, can you hear me? I'm not on mute.
You're back.
Okay. Probably an issue of where's my microphone. Part of the presentation discussed renovations to bring us up to ADA compliance. Mm-hmm. And those were part of priority 1. And mm-hmm. Obviously that's hugely important. But then you also talked about that, or he mentioned that priority 1 totals $80 million. And even if we continue the current millage by getting a new bond, that only brings in $54 million. Are we legally required to make those compliance updates and other facelift matters when we have pipes that are ready to burst?
I'll let Robert's an architect, so I'll let him answer that more than anything. But I will tell you that the things that are critical, there's things in priority 1 that are more critical than other criticals, right? So the ADA type things, and if we do construction, we're going to have to obviously address certain ADA requirements. And certain key things like mechanical, electrical, and plumbing, those will be there in some fashion. We're going to have to really narrow it down. We still have some work to do, like I said. But Robert, do you want to kick in on that a little bit about what we're required to do when you do construction?
You're on mute, Robert.
Sorry about that. So basically, your buildings are older buildings. They're grandfathered in as far as their design. But once you touch a space and start renovating it, you should bring it up to code compliance. When I refer to the restrooms in your buildings, a lot of them have openings that don't allow for wheelchair access. And where the plumbing fixtures are situated, they don't allow for a handicap stall to be provided to meet today's ADA standards. So those are the big chunks, the big issues I believe that address the ADA non-compliance, most of which your buildings are compliant to some degree. But as we go through our assessment, we want to make sure that we provide for ADA compliance in your buildings, and that's why we've shifted those elements into priority 1.
Thank you for commenting on that. appreciate now. I understand that the ADA compliance is a much smaller area, and also we have to do it once we're touching those areas anyways.
Yeah.
It, somewhere along the presentation, it was mentioned that these buildings are quite old, several decades old, and that the infrastructure in the buildings is 40 to 60 years old. Did I hear that right?
Yep. Yes,
And
ma'am.
and then again, looking at when we look at priority 1, 2, and 3, our priority 1 is 80 million compared with priority 2, 14, and priority 3, 30 million.
Mhm.
I would think that a better planned scenario would wind up with those categories more equal, so we can have a more rolling maintenance as opposed to having an 80 million priority 1. Are you guys?
That's right.
following
No,
me?
I totally agree with you. You know,
So
as
I have a 2-part question.
okay, go ahead.
The first part is the past. How did we wind up here? And I know this is a new administration, so feel free to go nuts on it. How did we get here where we have an $80 million priority 1? And more importantly, to some extent, what are we doing to set us up so that in the future we have these massive infrastructure projects on a more on a rolling maintenance scale, so we don't wind up in 30 or 40 years from now having another equivalent to $80 million in this kind of situation?
I can take this. So back in 15, I'm not sure if you were on the board when we spoke about this, Mr. Klein, but back in 15, the school district hired Partners in Architecture to do a facility assessment, and that is now the architect, and also hired Plant Moran to do a technology study.
Right, I was on
And-
the a subcommittee then.
Okay, and back then, this 126 million that you're seeing, that number was somewhere in the neighborhood of 65 or 70 million, I believe. And the decision, and I don't know why it was, back 5 years ago, there was a decision to not go for a bond issue, or it just didn't happen. Whether that was from the superintendent or the board, whatever, that's the past. But what's really happened is, 13 years between bond issues is too long. You should really be about 6 or 7 years between bond issues, maintaining that similar millage rate. And if we would have had a bond in 15 or 16, this number would be probably $30 or $40 million in that first column. That's really how we got to where we are today. 13 years is just too long between bonds for significant improvements. And so the schedule is, and this 80 million has to go down. We're not done yet. This is just where we're at today. We're going to do some significant improvements, again, mechanical, electrical, and plumbing, many of which will have a 20-year life and some of a 40-year life. So this is being set up where down the road, there will be the ability to do another bond theoretically every 7 years, give or take. That's generally how you should do something like this. So because technology is good for about 5 years. Our technology assessment that we reviewed today probably needs 10 or $11 million. Well, we're going to probably allot 5 million. If we did 5 million 5 years ago, we would have had 5 million today. We'd be in great shape. So we just need to have bonds more often, to be honest, but while maintaining the same millage rate. If that helps.
It does, in terms of the plan going forward, just to hone in on a little piece.
Uh-huh.
And I think this addressed it. What you mentioned is that some of our projects will be done with they'll have different sunsets in mind.
That's right.
That some projects will need to be redone in 20 years, some in 40 years, and presumably some at other points as well.
Yes.
And so we'll wind up with a stagger as opposed to falling off a cliff.
That's absolutely right. And a lot of these things, that's a good point. A lot of these things have fallen off the cliff. And they fell off the cliff probably 5 or 10 years ago, which is why we're here trying to do the best thing we can with some Band-Aid projects. And I want to call them Band-Aids because playgrounds are more than a Band-Aid. The media centers are more than a Band-Aid and other things. But you're absolutely right. We kind of fell off the cliff. You can compare it to doing something at your house. If you let it go too long, it's just going to not look very good at your house. And you're trying to catch up and do your roofs and you're siding your windows all at once. That's where we're at right now, is doing it all at once. But we don't have enough money to do it all at once.
Presuming that we get this bond and now we have $54 million to play with next summer, is that when it would come through?
Well, we would, the way we would do it is we would issue it in 3 series likely. So this is just the first go at it. We would change this, and this is far from done. We would have around 16 million get it next, it would usually be, if it's a May election, probably in June, July, depending on the rates. And we'll look and see how the market is. A couple of years later, get another 16 million, and then a couple of years later, get another 22 million. And that would take us through around 26, 27, give or take, for construction projects. Some of those critical need ones are critical, but they're not really needed to be done for 4 or 5 years.
Okay, so even if we get this 54 million, it's actually spread over a couple of years. We're not doing $50 million of work in 2021.
We're doing it likely over like 5 years.
Okay.
If we did it all in like 3 years, then we wouldn't be able to have $54 million, because now you're borrowing more money up front, and therefore
more interest.
Exactly. So you have a lower bond amount. So we really need to spread these projects out more.
Okay. That's it for me.
Thank you for your questions.
Thank you for all your hard work.
Trustee Goodfriend.
First, Mr. Stempy and Mr. Barr, thank you very much for this report. It's something that I had hoped for a long time. I do have that entire report from Partners Architect. I have it in my home here in my file cabinet, and it was extensive. Okay. However, I had hoped about 5 years ago to do a bond, but it was rejected by others. Okay. Now, some of these buildings had roofs, such as the high school. And what kind of the high school had a full roof put on it at the time. So that's what, 10 years ago, Mr. Barr, approximately 10.
12 years ago, I believe. Yep.
Yeah. So, well, in 2008 is when the bond approved.
Right. So it was 8 or 9 or 10. I have to look and see when it was done.
Right.
Right.
Something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to know what we have in protection if there's been, the wearing has not been satisfactory to what was put on.
Mm-hmm.
And what kind of warranty is there still that we can have?
We can answer. Can I answer that first one real quick? Because Mr. Burnett's here and he can talk about the, I believe, 25-year warranty on that. If you don't mind, real quick, Mrs. Goodfriend. Steve, go ahead. Go off mute.
Yeah. I when I got in my position, Jim and I was able to give me some operation maintenance manuals from the 2008 bond, and I was able to locate that we do have Duralast roofs, which have a 15-year warranty on every one of our buildings except the 05 building and the administration building. Mm-hmm. We also did not put a roof on the pool and the planetarium and a couple HVACs at the high school. The rest of the roofs are warranted till 2024, and a couple of them are going into 2025. So we are currently utilizing those warranties, and so the repairs are now under warranty, and the company has really been responsive to me. When we have a leak, we're out really quick. They're out quick to get those repaired. And it's a proven roofing system, Duralast. So those ones will take us into the middle of this bond under warranty. The Freshman Institute, that whole building, and the administration building, we're going to do a roofing assessment to see what those roofs are, what the likelihood of those needing to be replaced are.
Now, it doesn't mean you replace them just when your warranty's up, but we have that in a priority 3 right now because, roofs will generally last at least 20 years, but 15 years is under warranty.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I've asked that question many times, and you two gentlemen have answered a question that has taken years that I have not had answers to. I was here when this was done, and I was quite expressive in what I wanted in warranties. And so we have them. That's number one. When we go for a bond or a millage, if we go for 54 million, and if we only use 16 of that, the first, and break it down into 3 parts, won't we be able to generate some interest on the balance while it's not being used and it's in holding station?
Well, we don't take all $54 million on day one.
Okay.
That's really, it's given us the ability or the allowance to spend to
Okay.
borrow it. We won't, just like a line of credit, if you ever have one in your house, you
Right.
don't borrow it till you need it. Now, if we take $16 million and we're spending it over 2 or 3 years,
Mhm.
there will be interest earned on that while it's
Right.
being spent down. But
That's
we
what-
won't, so as the construction amounts being spent down, we will earn interest on that. And we've taken that into account in these, but again, interest these days is really small. So it's not much of a, I did a bond where I formerly worked in, we were earning 3-4%, and now it's, under 0.5%. So it helps you when you sell your bonds. It doesn't necessarily help you when you're trying to earn money on your investments right now. But interest rates are extremely low, as you know, if you're looking at your mortgage or other things, they're extremely low right now.
Well, I don't have a mortgage, thank goodness. So
Okay.
I'm lucky that way. There's some other things. I, for one, agree that we should do it in the May series. It's a good time, and there's nothing else on the issues that would be up for elections. So that's an easier sell when you have one issue for the district. I know it costs a little, some money that we would have to pay for the election itself. However, I think it's worthy of that, and it's a good time of year weather-wise, as well as the political scene, that we would be the only people. Because I have been involved with millages and bonds in the past, and they've all been successful for me and in this community. Why there's neglect in this building, as Mr. Klein asked, I would say that the neglect was not always intentional. I had really wanted to do a bond in millage 5 years ago. That was really good times that were passing easily. However, that wasn't. But to really look at things, we were in a very bad situation about 10 years ago with our deficit, and it was enormous.
Mhm.
And so, and everybody took a hit. Our teachers, all of our employees took a hit, and they were gracious about it. And so it was to give to the kids as much as we could with the monies that we had available, but it did cause other things to be passed. And sometimes other administrations may have felt there were other worthy projects that they thought would be wise. The board building has not been done in centuries. Well, it seems like centuries, but it has always been neglected. And then again, we have to look at what I call the Clinton School, which is the original building of this district. And so there's been repairs done at times, but it's until we can decide with the direction of Mr. Barr and Dr. Hitchcock and others, we'll have to see where we go with that as well. But I appreciate Mr. Stempian and Plant Moran coming in. I appreciate Mr. Barr for what he's done. I have taken a tour of this entire district with Dr. Hitchcock and Mr. Burnett. Thank you. The work that has been accomplished is miraculous. The media centers are beautiful, and they were still in construction stage, but its future and the brightness is just, it's overwhelming to know what our young people will have once we get them back in. And the playgrounds were terrific. And I will tell you, we do need parking lots, because I was one of those board members that refused to do parking lots from the last bond because we needed so much that I felt my vote said that, my one vote, that it was further and more important to do things to the buildings that we needed so that it would be well for safety and health for our staff as well as our young people. So that's where we are. And now we have to go forward and be brave about this and put our foot in and let's get it done. I do know we can do it. We need the community to be a committee to work, to work with the administration. So that it's terribly important. That's a very, very important part of selling this issue. Thank you.
Thank you,
Nice work,
Trustee.
Mr. Barr.
Thank you, Trustee Goodfriend. Trustee Corcoran? Do you have a question?
Actually, I did have a few, but they were actually answered in regards, oh, there is one that I don't think was answered. But Mr. Barr, you were talking about what can we do to generate the money or the mill, or, you know, you said there's more ways to generate the revenue, or, you know, I can't remember now because it was a long time ago, but I did write a note down. But I want to say if you can elaborate a little bit on what other ways that we can do to generate that you had mentioned in the presentation.
Well, you can really, there's not a lot of ways. You can use your general fund. We have a sinking fund. You can use a bond. You can use a bond. Some districts have enhancement millages, which goes into the general fund, typically for teaching and learning versus facility assessments. And those are really the primary ones that you would use for, you know, capital improvements. It's primarily a sinking fund and a bond. Those are really the ones you would do.
Okay. And then Mr. Klein did mention, but I don't know if it was answered, he talked about a better plan. Would that better plan be, of course, our bond?
I think the better plan, what he was referring to, is to smooth those numbers out so we don't have 80 million in 1 year, in one priority over 3 or 4 years, is to try and smooth that. Just again, like your house, you don't want to have big hits at one time. You really want to smooth that out so you've got, you know, a few $1 million every year. And that's what we're trying to set up for after this. We have a little catching up to do.
Yeah, after 12 years, there is a lot, there's a huge gap there. So it is going to take time to fill that gap, because that's huge.
Yes.
That was it.
Okay, thank you. Are there other board members with questions about the facilities assessment?
I don't have a question, just a statement.
Okay. Go ahead, Trustee Bailey.
Yeah, I think this is a well put together report. I mean, it's easy to understand. I walked through the schools, as I mentioned before, with Trustee Goodfriend and the superintendent, and I saw the progress. I saw the progress and where it's going. The media center looks great. I did see where we had books and the bathrooms, the bathrooms were used as storage. So I do see where there is a need for everything that you guys are doing, and you guys are doing a great job. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Any other board members with questions? Okay, I don't see any. All right, I do have a question for you, Robert. You mentioned the enrollment projections and you talked about trends in Oakland County. Have you looked also at trends in Wayne County, since we have a significant student population that comes from Wayne County?
Yes, we know that in the southeastern Michigan corridor, there is a steady decline. I'm doing work for a client in Wayne County currently, and they've dropped from about 12,000 students down to 7,000 over a course of 10 years. So we're seeing the trends predominantly going down as far as enrollments in southeastern Michigan. There are pockets where you see some growth in outlying areas, some surrounding Detroit and some over in Grand Rapids. But for the most part, we see a sharp decline in student population that, of course, affects your overall funding for your school district. And our clients have looked at ways of adjusting to accommodate the decline in enrollment, and that's pretty much across the board.
All right, thank you. And I think, and Steve, I look forward to reading the full report if you can share that with us. Absolutely. And I think one of the things, I think all of us that are here in this meeting know about the great things that are happening in Oak Park, and we're going to hear more in a moment as far as some of the social emotional things we're doing as well. I think we also need to make sure that we're telling that story to the community, to the residents that we're going to be asking to approve the bond. Obviously, the playgrounds are very visible, but people who aren't in those buildings every day, and that's, you know, even, especially now that even our students aren't in the buildings every day, I think we need to think about ways of getting that word out so that people understand those great things that are going on, so that when we do come to them in a few months, if we do approve that bond issue or that bond question, and we're asking them to approve the bond, and which is tax money that residents have to pay, that they understand where that money is being spent and what are the great things happening in the district. So I think we really need to focus on those things going forward. All right, so we move on to the presentation from Kids. Dr. Hitchcock, did you want to introduce Rabbi G?
Absolutely. I had the good fortune of transitioning to Oak Park last September, and Dr. G, as well as Miss Carrington Smith, were two people that I think I met within the first few weeks of transitioning to the district. And they came in and they really told me the story of Kids Kicking Cancer and the history of their work at Pepper Elementary School. And I was really sold after hearing the story of what this work meant to them, both professionally and personally, but also their dedication to the students in our district in particular, who have a number of societal challenges, but giving them personal strategies to overcome those challenges. And that was even before COVID came about. So I have immense respect for them both. I'm going to turn it over to Rabbi G to share more information with you and about how we plan to extend our work beyond Pepper Elementary School to provide these tools to students and staff district-wide.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hitchcock, and thank you to the Oak Park School Board. It has been an honor to be with you for the last 2 years, and I'm looking to go forward in a way that can really make a difference for children all over the state of Michigan and beyond. I have to tell you as an aside, you know, biblically, one is not allowed to embarrass or say anything in front of someone else that could be a cause of their embarrassment. But I checked all the sources. There's nothing about if they happen to be there on Zoom. So I want to say in front of Dr. Hitchcock, but she's not really here, she's on Zoom, what an extraordinary superintendent that you have. We are so honored that she has taken a major role in helping to form and shape a program that in the Oak Park district, and our goal is to spread our hero circle throughout the entire district of Oak Park, and then to the rest of the state of Michigan. This is a program that's being chaired by Bridget McCormick, who is the Chief Justice of the Michigan Supreme Court. And Dr. Hitchcock has added a wisdom, a mentorship, an extraordinary knowledge base, and a passion. And it's rare to speak to a superintendent of schools who feels the presence of every single child in that school district. It's, of course, you know, teachers have their classrooms, but I think that Dr. Hitchcock has a lot of classrooms and every single child is sitting in front of her every single day. And that's been such a privilege to watch and to participate with. Just in a word, we have created a hero circle. The concept of the hero circle are 3 words: power, peace, purpose, where children who are very sick learn that they can breathe in a light using martial arts power, push out pain, fear, and anger. We ask the kids what's their purpose, they yell out to teach the world. And so as we began to build this circle, and now we just installed 2 months ago routers in Zimbabwe and Zambia, where we're reaching children in the middle of Africa, teaching them how to breathe in the light and blow out the darkness, even during a COVID period. But children who are sick feel very different. They feel very estranged from their childhood. When we explain to them that there are children around the world who are learning from them, who are motivated, inspired by them to breathe in the light and blow out the darkness, it changes those children. And when we stood in front of the second, third, fourth, and last year, the fifth grade programs at Pepper Elementary School, this year actually starting the fifth grade, when we stood in front of these children and told them there are children who are sick all over the planet, and if you could breathe in the light and blow out the darkness, you can help them. We've had children who had extreme trauma in their lives, children whose parents, sometimes both, been incarcerated. But they're thrilled to know that they could help another child. And that's the hero circle, allowing these children to know that they have a purpose, using the martial arts, which is a sense of empowerment. And we have actually functional MRIs to show the changes that we make in the trauma section of children's brains. So our goal tonight is to introduce you a little bit more to our plans. We know you're already aboard. It's to thank you for allowing Dr. Hitchcock to be a major leader in this process as we grow this to the entire Oak Park School District, but use that as a model. Today, as I spoke to Dr. Rice, Michael Rice, who is, as you know, the superintendent of the MDE, and I told him about what we're doing in Oak Park, and what his response was. He had his whole team and some high-level members of the Department of Health and Human Services on our Zoom call today. He wants us to give him a presentation because he needs it. And he wants to hear what the children are learning because he said, Michigan is focused on social emotional learning, on SEL, significantly. And we're bringing to the table a process that we are piloting in Oak Park that can be valuable to all the children in the state of Michigan. And it's something that we hope, as we are ready to sell your bond, although I must say the idea of a infrastructure being 60 years old, I think that's young, but okay, everybody has their own personal perspective. But the idea of allowing the citizens of Oak Park to know that their children piloted a program that's impacting children all over the world, but serves as the model for the entire state of Michigan and beyond, it's something that I want to share that pride with you. So I'm going to show you a quick clip. If I could introduce two special people with me today from our innovation team. One of them is Jamila Carrington-Smith, and the second is Kelly Blankenship. Jamila is an extraordinary individual. I'll ask her to introduce herself. And Jamila, if you could also mention Kelly's pedigree, because the people of Oak Park should know who she is.
Yes, thank you so much for having us tonight. I'm Jamila. I work with Rabbi G. I actually came on to Kids Kicking Cancer as a parent, and then was so excited to be working with someone who just has such an expansive imagination about the ways that we can welcome more people into the Heroes Circle. I come from a marketing background, which might seem a little unusual, but basically it's just, it's put me in touch with some resources and some ways of thinking that mean that when Rabbi G and I are together, we can make some of these things come to life. So the school program, the program that we've done with Oak Park Schools, is something that I am immensely proud of. And really just, I feel that much more proud of the work that we do, because after our first year of working with Pepper Elementary School, one of the teachers who I see just was an extraordinary teacher when she was in the role, but as she retired said, hey, I like this program and I like what I see happening with the children in our school, and I would love to work with you. So to that end, I'd love to introduce to some of you, but probably just reacquaint most of you with Kelly Blankenship, who's just an extraordinary partner to have. Kelly.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you for having us. I'm thrilled to be here. It's like coming home again. I am thrilled to be working with Rabbi G and Jamila on this program because it's important. Our children need it, and it works. And we have data that shows that it's very effective. So I can't wait to show you some of the nuts and bolts this evening.
Jamila, if you could show a quick video that we made that after the first year at Pepper. And what's unique about the video is it describes that some of the children even on the spectrum of autism, were benefiting from the program, and we didn't even know that they were a subset of the population. Is it able to play? Perfect. Well, don't hear the sound. So Jamila, let's stop it if you don't mind. I'm just concerned about the sound and the. We'll be happy to send everybody a clip of it, just as sometimes in the world of streaming. Here we go.
Okay, so I'll play the video and hopefully we won't have any sound issues.
The D. Dan and Betty Kahn Foundation have allowed Kids Kicking Cancer to create a Children Healing Children's program. Part of the theme of the Hero Circle that is a major component of what the children of Kids Kicking Cancer do across the globe. Our mantra, power, peace, purpose, that we can bring in this amazing energy and push out pain, fear, and anger. We ask the children, what's your purpose? They yell out, to teach the world, because every one of our children becomes a teacher. Let's pull in the light and blow out the darkness. The goal of the foundation grant that we received this year was to demonstrate that our children facing cancer and disease can inspire children in trauma, other types of trauma. The power of the martial arts as a therapy is profound. And our goal in demonstrating it within this 2-year program is to demonstrate that children can learn techniques that will allow them not only to control their present, but to give them opportunities for their future.
A program such as the Kids Kicking Cancer program, what it does, it provides our students with skill sets. It teaches children how to cope and deal and address adverse circumstances, that they do have power, that they do have control. Your ability to use the techniques that we've given you and take control helps make Pepper Elementary School a fantastic school.
With the autism students, we've seen a decrease in behaviors and an increase in them being able to control their own emotions, being able to follow directions for the first time, being able to articulate when they're able to that they are upset.
And now,
with our general ed population, the 3rd and 4th graders, we've seen a significant decrease in them getting into what I call frenemy fights.
You see everything begin to settle and relax. You can take control over your brain.
Our kids are beginning to self-monitor and use this to better themselves and improve on their academics.
One of my power moments was when me and my friends are out playing like jailbreak, a Roblox game, but we're playing it in real life. One of my friends was cheating and it made me mad. So I went inside the house for a few minutes to power breathe and calm down. Then I came back out happy. And then I asked nicely if he could stop cheating and he stopped.
I've seen a lot of the students do the breath breaks. They really enjoy it. They do it a lot. I see it more when they're frustrated or angry, and they'll take a step back. I used the breathing. My brother passed away a couple weeks ago. So I did use it. It didn't help me. Sorry. But it did help in situations that I needed it.
This is the power of the Children Healing Children's grant that we are so grateful to the D. Dan and Betty Kahn Foundation for supplying to us. And by the end of next year, our goal is to create a syllabus for early interventional models, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th grade, and then create the curriculum that allow us to extend from that. Ultimately, The goal is to teach what we teach at Kids Kicking Cancer. Power, peace, purpose. That no matter what we face in our lives, we can breathe in that light and push out the darkness. This past week, and I'm here tonight, particularly knowing that Oak Park as a school district, as a community, went through a very tragic week. And this past Friday, we taught the social workers all together how to use that breath break because of the challenges that your support staff are going through after the tragic death of 2 students through a traffic accident, only a day following the death of another student due to medical complications. The ability for the staff to integrate this, to create breathing senseis, and to go from the early education to the high school and then into the intermediary school is our goal. The goal being that the children that we work with, we will evidence the changes that we make in their brains from a neurological perspective, from a social perspective, but trying to break, and the reason that the Chief Justice of the Michigan Supreme Court is chairing this effort, as she told me, is that we have to think upstream how to break the classroom to prison pipeline. And as Superintendent Rice said to me today, he says it doesn't start in the classroom. They walk into our schools a bundle of toxic stress. We offer the children, rather than talking about mindfulness, which is great, or yoga, which I find a bit of a stretch. That's just my bad sense of humor. I apologize. To give them empowerment as martial artists, give them a purpose. If you can do this, you can help kids all across the globe. And every one of our children, every one of your children, become teachers to others. That's referred to as power, peace, purpose. So as we go forward to build this program, and we have plans to take this to some major foundations to support our work in Oak Park, knowing that we have the backing of your superintendent in a leadership role, which has been personally to me so important. And I view her now as a personal mentor. But knowing that we have the role of your superintendent and the entire support of the school board, we will not have to show up on a millage. We're not going to go to you for the financial support to build this. Together, we will go as partners to build this as a program, because ultimately, the cost to turn a child into a powerful warrior and a victor and remove them from the psychology of being a victim of the trauma that they experience, the adverse childhood experiences that pile up in their lives, is so cost effective. And if we could do this with one child, we could do this with millions of children. So I'm here to continue to ask for your support, your partnership, your love, not asking for your money, but to ask for the ongoing partnership that we have together to allow Oak Park to be a model of breathing in the light and blowing out the darkness. I want to share some facts with you, and I'm going to turn it over to Jamila, if I may, just to talk about some of the reactions to the program over the last 2 years. Jamila?
Yes. Well, what I want to do at this point is the video, I think, showed you a little bit about where we've been. And I want to talk a little bit about where we're going, because 2020, as you know, was just an extraordinary year for all of us. But we were able to do some things with the program and make some key adjustments that led to some surprises, some very encouraging surprises, and also to lay the groundwork for how to move forward and how to support Oak Park schools in the best possible way in whatever form things may take in the near future. So with that, I have a few slides here. We're going to fly through them. And I do want to turn it over to Kelly, because she's just been such an extraordinary partner, you know, had such a huge role in making sure that what we do is very relevant and doable. in classrooms. So I'd like to turn it over to Kelly to take the first few slides, and then I'll wrap it up with the next few. So Kelly.
All righty, thank you. Jamila, are you going to advance the slides for me, or can I do that? I'm not sure if I can do that here.
I'll drive.
Cool, okay. All right, so I would like to go through 3 parts: the integration piece, how we'll launch in school, and how we're going to create an all-school culture. So let's start with the integration. The integration looks like this. Tonight we're talking to all of you. The next step is that we would like to talk, and we actually have time scheduled with the elementary principals later on in October to talk to them about the program, to introduce it to them, and to lay out our plan for what it will look like in their school. The next step, and actually the very next day, we will be meeting with Oak Park social workers. We had a great meeting with them last Friday. This next meeting in October will be some deeper work on breath break, because we're hoping that our social workers can become a really, really key component to what we need in terms of support for teachers with students. So we're looking at social workers to become breath break coaches, and not just social workers, but some of the other staff members too. We'll be meeting with teachers in early November. And at that meeting, we'll be rolling out the plan, but we'll also be rolling out the plan about how we are here to support teachers as well as students, but we're here to support teachers too. So during the month of November and December, we will be sending out some emails, some reminders, some, supportive things to just encourage them, especially during the stressful times of the holidays. So we know that the breath break can work for students, and it can work during those stressful times during the holidays. So, and then our next slide is how we'll roll it out, or when we'll roll it out. So we'll be rolling out to the 3 elementary schools, grades 3 through 5 in January, and then rolling out to the middle school in September. And of course, teacher training for the middle school teachers will happen in August. And then high school, the rollout plan is January 22. Next slide. I mentioned earlier, a couple minutes ago, about breath break coaches and social workers, but our breath break coaches will be people that are trained in how to help students that's escalated in the classroom. Teachers often need to have some support. So this is a person who will be designated in each building. Kids Kicking Cancer will provide a stipend to help support that person. And this is a person who can maybe come into the classroom and help that child de-escalate, lead them through a breath break, so that we are keeping students in class as much as possible, but also knowing that sometimes that child may need to be removed temporarily just to work through what's going on. So breath break coaches will be a really key partner. And another thing that we'll do is create temporary spaces in the classroom, a place when a child's feeling stress, fear, anger, that they can go and possibly take a breath break, just have a moment. And this space might be a small yoga mat. It might be a small space that the teacher has created, or it might be a space that the child chooses to go to. It might not be a specific designated space, but just a place where they can go and gather their thoughts.
Kelly, if I can interrupt for just 1 second, if you noticed on the video, the children had globes, and on the globes, it said, "I'm the boss of my brain." And when the children are agitated, they shake the globe, they do the breathing until they could read clearly, "I'm the boss of my brain."
Right. When my students got those globes at the end of the first year, during our culminating celebration, they loved those globes, and it was a very powerful tool and reminder for them. And then finally, this next slide, Jamila, please. the all school breath break. Okay. We our goal is to, and I don't know if principals are having all school announcements at the beginning of each day right now. I suspect they're not. You know, while school is virtual, it's probably just teachers. But when we get back into school, the idea is that principals will lead an all school breath break at the beginning of the morning during announcements. It'll be a beautiful way to start the day, to calm down, to center our thoughts, and possibly if principals see a need, I mean, this could be something that could be a go-to in the afternoon when sometimes those behaviors spike during lunchtime. So although not all classrooms will be part of the Hero Circle training, the breath break can definitely become an all-school tool that all children can use. And with that, I'm going to hand it back to Jamila.
Okay, so we talked a little bit about some of the things we've done, you know, some of the slides that Kelly has walked through, and I just cannot say enough the level of granular detail that Kelly and I have waded through and developed to make this thing work. And in fact, I want to give a special thanks to Kelly, because one of the big pivots that we made was that you saw in the video that the program was very dependent on us being in schools, and we have martial artists who are just extraordinary. They are extraordinary with the students. And a lot of the program's success had to do with that element of the program. And so when COVID came, we were very challenged to figure out how to recreate as much of that magic as we could, as well as to pivot so that we weren't just doing an online version of what we were doing in schools, but to truly use the medium, use the online medium in a way that was going to be helpful for students. So Kelly and I have done a lot of work to make that happen. So it's a little tough to even talk about it in broad strokes without kind of getting into the how. So we're holding back a little bit on a lot of those details. But there is one thing that I want to share. In September, we worked in partnership with Wayne State University to do research to track how we're doing and what the results of this program were. And as with everything, they had to make a pivot too. So instead of being able to ask teachers, what's happening in your classroom? What kinds of behaviors are you seeing with students? We changed so that we created a survey that went to students and their families. So we were able to ask families directly some questions about the specific types of stressors and COVID-related stressors that their children were seeing, as well as ask students, how are you using the breath break? When are you using it, et cetera. So this is just a couple of findings that we thought were pretty exciting. First, 3 time periods. So at the very beginning of the year in October, November, we collected some data in schools, in classrooms, but our first survey period happened in May, and our second survey period happened in August. As you recall, in May, this was a little bit of a chaotic time. Everyone was trying to sort out exactly what learning would look like, and there were a lot of questions. In August, not only were there those questions and everyone was still trying to sort out what to do for the 2020-21 school year, but there had been summer break. And we were just so encouraged to learn that in August, so many students were continuing to use the breath break. Now, this was extraordinary because many of our students were unfortunately affected by COVID. They either know of someone or know someone directly who has gotten sick with coronavirus, and some of them directly witnessed someone who got sick and unfortunately who died of coronavirus. And that number only increased from the May period to the August time period. However, students said that they are using the breath break. And it was extraordinary because even in August, more than 80% of students were saying, hey, I still use this and it works for me. It calms me down. It calms the people around me down. They were saying, I still feel like a powerful martial artist, which is one of the key messages that we include in our program. And, you know, it's funny because in all research, and certainly in survey research, there's always going to be a bit of selection bias. So the people who are likely to say, yes, I use this, are also the people who are most likely to answer the survey in the first place. And so with all research, survey research, you kind of want to take that into account. But I heard a very encouraging anecdote from one of our martial artists who has a family member who is a teacher at Pepper. And what this teacher has told him is that she, because she's so intimately aware with our program, wanted to continue the breath break work with her students and introduce it to her students, her 5th graders. And so she went to tell them about the breath break and here's how you do it. And the kids said, oh, no, we already know that and we already use it. So they were familiar with it, they were on board with it, and they said, this is something that we actively use. And that's really extraordinary for us. And so Kelly talked a little bit about the timeline for how we want to roll this out into the middle and high schools. Our timeline is that much more urgent because we want to be ready to catch these students when they go into middle school and they have some issues that are going to be a little different from what they experienced in elementary school. And part of our charge as we do that is to work closely with some of the social workers and other professionals in the building so that we design programs that are meaningfully differentiated at each age and each stage, middle school and high school, different from what's happening in the elementary school. So again, we're very honored to be here. We are honored to be working with the children of Oak Park schools. And that's all I have for now, but just great news all around so far.
So I want to thank you very much for allowing us to make this presentation. I feel a little bit like a suitor because I would like to ask your permission, not for your daughter's hand, but for your superintendent's hand in bringing us in the leadership role into a pilot program throughout all of Oak Park schools. And I've been asked by our Chief Justice, Justice McCormick, to ask your permission if in fact you would allow your superintendent to be the co-chair of this program for all of Michigan. Obviously, the co-chair program is these 2 years to build it out through all of Oak Park. And then we'll see if we can get a reestablishment of elongating that process after those 2 years. But for at least the 2 years that we initially are planting this program through all of Oak Park, all of this, of course, is contingent upon our ability to find the foundation support, which we believe we will get because of the level of interest that we have from the highest level of the state government. So we don't think it's going to be a far stretch to say that we will find funding. Again, we're not going to come to you for funding, but allowing us to officially appoint Dr. Hitchcock as a co-chair of this Childhood Resilience Initiative for the Oak Park schools, which will then be the model for all of Michigan, would be my #1 ask. And your approbation as the school board saying, we're behind this. We want our kids to breathe in light and teach the rest of the world that they're very powerful.
Thank you, Rabbi Goldberg. Are there board members who have questions?
No, just one. I just say great presentation and thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for being our partner.
Trustee Goodfriend.
Thank you. Rabbi Goldberg, I've read about you in our local newspaper, the Detroit Jewish News, for a long time. I too have suffered those losses, and my family has suffered losses. And when it was brought to us a couple years ago by a teacher at Pepper, who just raved about it, and of course, that's how we began. I compliment you for everything that you do. And sometimes I really believe this week has been really a difficult week for many of us as adults to be able to blow out the dark and breathe in the light. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Goodfriend. Are there other board members who have questions? All right, I don't see any. I just want to say this is really a great example of the partnership that exists. This was first brought to us by a resident of our community who works at Kids Kicking Cancer, who told us about this program that was being developed, and we were able to connect with them to bring it to Oak Park. So, and it's something that right now only exists in Oak Park. So students going to other districts, unfortunately, don't have access to this great program, but I think it's another thing that we can highlight about the great opportunities we have in Oak Park, and the innovative solutions that we're finding, especially in social emotional learning, which is something I know that's a very big focus for Dr. Hitchcock and her team. So thank you, Rabbi Goldberg, and thank you, Kelly and Jamila. And we're going to move now to our next agenda item, which is the extended COVID-19 learning plan. And is that Cassandra?
Yes, good afternoon, board and audience. Last board meeting, I presented on the extended COVID-19 plan with the intention that the Oak Park Board of Education move to a resolution to approve this plan this evening. And so it would be moved to be an action item.
All right, thank you. Do any board members have questions about the extended COVID-19 learning plan? I don't see any. And so we'll move on to audience participation. Trustee Lunkins, would you like to read the audience participation, please? I don't hear Trustee Lunkins, so
I don't think she's here.
okay. I'll just go ahead. So this is an opportunity for the community to speak and give the board their comments. If any community members would like to speak, please indicate that in the chat and I will call on you. We do ask everyone to limit your comments to 3 minutes so that all who wish to speak may have the opportunity to do so. Please start by stating your name and your address. And we do want to remind the community that this is one-way communication. So we appreciate your comments and we'll hear and listen and consider your comments, but we will not be responding to anything. We will not be responding directly during the meeting to anything that's said during public comment. So I see Mr. Haley said he wants to speak. Go ahead, Mr. Haley.
Good evening. My name is Emmanuel Haley. I live at 14301 Kingston Street in Oak Park, and I am the proud principal of the Dr. James N. Pepper Elementary School. I come this evening to acknowledge the retirement of a long-term Pepper staff member. Her name is Vivian Salmu. While Vivian is retiring, she declined my encouragement to appear at the board meeting tonight. But Vivian has worked in the Oak Park School District for 41 years. She has served as an ELL para, Media Center para support person, K-3 reading and math interventionist, a parent facilitator. She has interpreted many parent meetings that I've had with parents who spoke French, Arabic, and other languages. She provided behavior support, homework club oversight, after-school tutoring. She served as a member of our social committee, our hospitality committee. She was the book fair chairman for many years. And we have current parents who proudly tell their students that Mrs. Salmu was their tutor at one time. About 21 years ago, when I first started working in the district as a substitute teacher, I struck up a conversation with Vivian, and we found out that we both had a love and passion for jazz music. And at that time, she lent me a CD by the Paris Sisters, which I have kept. So needless to say, with today being the last day, she was in the media center, unpacking books and packing old books and The few of us that were in the building, we stopped by and we shared memories. And I just want to go on record for publicly thanking another member of the Pepper family, Vivian Salmu, for 41 years. We will certainly miss her. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Haley, and thank you, Ms. Samu. Are there any other comments from the community? Please indicate in the chat that you'd like to speak. And I don't see any, so I'm going to go ahead and move to action items. We move to action item 7A. Trustee Goodfriend, would you like to read that, please?
You're on mute.
What was your request, Mr. Aida?
Would you like to read action item 7A, please?
The extended COVID. I had it right here now. I put it away. Here it is. Resolved that the Oak Park Board of Education approve the Oak Park Schools extended COVID-19 learning plan, which includes reconfiguration of how instruction will be delivered during the 2020 through 2021 school year as presented at this evening's meeting.
Is there a second?
Support.
Moved by Trustee Goodfriend, supported by Trustee Smith. Are there any questions from the board on the motion? I don't see any. I just want to say we've received some great feedback that was emailed to the board about how unique from one of our teachers who expressed to us how, in speaking with teachers in other districts, it strikes her how well designed this program is, really in contrast, and the support that teachers are getting to implement this. And she shared with me, I responded to her comment and thanked her for it. And she told me that she's been encouraging her friends to sign their kids up for Oak Park schools to get that quality instruction online, that virtual quality instruction online, because it's really such a great opportunity that we're providing. So thank you, Cassandra and Jamie and the whole team for the hard work to provide that for our students in this challenging time. Ms. Greer, Trustee Goodfriend.
Oh, may I make a comment about Dr. Hitchcock's program being put together so well?
Sure.
There was we have a motion on that. All right, go ahead.
All right, Ms. Greer, so the question is approval of the extended COVID-19 learning plan. Ms. Greer, will you please call the roll?
Smith?
Yes.
Lunkins? Klein?
Yes.
Bailey? Hoda?
Yes.
Yes. Goodfriend?
Yes.
And Copeland?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. We move on to action item 7B. Trustee Bailey, would you like to read that one, please? Or I'm sorry, before you read that, Trustee Goodfriend, did you have something you wanted to say?
Yes, I just wanted to say that I don't know if the board members had time to read some of the mail. But we got some mail today, email from a teacher. And it brightened up a whole day that has been pretty dreary. The whole week has been pretty dreary on how well our program is working. And then she's in the 9th grade staffing, and how well the youngsters are working and the parents are so receptive. And it's just terrific, Dr. Hitchcock. Our staff is really feeling good about it, and she just made it very complimentary. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Goodfriend. Action item 7B, Trustee Bailey, can you read that one, please?
When I click on this link, nothing shows up on the.
I'll take it.
On my,
Decline, do you have
my
7B?
background's pretty
I
loud.
do. Resolve that the Oak Park Board of Education approve the bid award for the administration building renovations to ML Shaner Construction Incorporated in the amount of $47,750. This purchase will be expended from the sinking fund. This recommendation came before the board for information and discussion at the September 14, 2020 committee of the whole board meeting.
Is there a second?
Support.
Moved by trustee Klein, supported by trustee Goodfriend. Are there any questions from the board on the motion? Okay, Ms. Greer, will you please call the roll? Ms. Greer, you may be muted.
Goodfriend,
Yes.
Lunkins,
Yes.
Klein,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Hoda,
Yes.
Bailey,
Yes.
and Cochran.
Yes.
Trustee Smith, can you please read 7C?
Bid award. Hold on, make sure I'm on off mute. Yeah, okay. Bid award Oak Park High School cafeteria renovations. Resolved that the Oak Park Board of Education accepts the bid award for the Oak Park High School renovations to Advanced Building Group in the amount of $292,967. This purchase will primarily be expended from the food service with limited expenditures from the sinking fund. This recommendation came before the board for information and discussion at the September 29th, 2020 committee of the whole board meeting.
Support.
Moved by trustee Smith. Was that trustee Corcoran that supported it?
No, I did
No,
it.
that was,
Trustee Lunkin, sorry, supported by trustee Lunkins. Are there any questions on the motion?
You better sit down.
Ms. Greer, will you please call the roll?
Lunkins,
Yes.
Hoda,
Yes.
Goodfriend,
Yes.
Bailey,
Yes.
Klein,
Yes.
Cochran,
yes.
and Smith.
Yes.
Okay, trustee Lunkins, will you please read 7D?
Mr. Holder, I have nothing on the side where it tells me what to read.
Okay.
Why, I don't know.
Okay, trustee Corcoran, can you read 7D, please?
I'd be happy to do it if you like.
Trustee Corcoran, are you there?
Yes, I'm sorry. I'm working through 4 different things here. I got it up. Transportation services, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Transportation services contract extension with First Student Incorporated. Resolved that the Oak Park School Board of Education accept the contract extension with First Student Incorporated Transportation Services from September 2020 through June 2025 as presented and recommended to the Board of Education at the September 14, 2020 board meeting.
I will support.
Moved by trustee Corcoran, supported by trustee Klein. Are there any questions on the motion from the board? Ms. Greer, will you please call the roll?
Hoda,
Yes.
Klein,
Yes.
Lunkins,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Cochran, Goodfriend,
Yes.
and Bailey.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Our next item is an information item regarding technology. Mr. Barr, go ahead.
Thank you very much. At the April 13th, 2020 board meeting, the board approved the purchase of 4,000 Chromebooks and 64 charging carts in the amount of $841,080. This was made from various COVID, primarily grant funding sources, and the board was kind enough to award that the same night as information, which I'm asking again tonight, so we can get our best chance of getting these devices as soon as possible. Like I said in the write-up, many districts are waiting still for several months to get their devices, and our devices are in our schools ready to go for our kids when they come back that we already received from those 4,000, and many of those, or some of those, are going home with students right now that need devices, so new students. Tonight I'm asking for some more Chromebooks and carts. I'm recommending and requesting the following purchase. 1,500 Lenovo Chromebooks, which is the same Chromebook that you approved back in April, totaling $313,125 from CDW, who's a vendor on the Oakland Schools cooperative bid, and 35 charging carts totaling $38,325 from CDW. There's several reasons for this additional purchase. Number one, when we did these original purchases, this was literally weeks after COVID hit us hard, right at the beginning actually. We were working with very preliminary quantities. We didn't even contact all the kids yet. Some of those didn't get contacted, their kids and families, till late April, even early May. So we were estimating our quantities, and the needs have exceeded our estimates. Everyone has a device that needs one at home, but we need more to backfill when our kids come back to school in person, and we'll have some spares. I don't think anyone thought on April 13th that it would be September 29th and we'd still be where we are today, that it evolved into what it has 6 months later. So, schooling is closed, obviously in person. This has resulted in the need for many more technologies for students. This is one of them, and you'll be seeing more in the next few board meetings. Myself, Jim Nye, and members from Oakland Schools are working on some projects right now. And the next thing is, subsequent to the original purchase in April of 20, the decision was made to leave these student laptops and Chromebooks at home for the duration of the school year. Again, not knowing how long COVID was going to last. Even if we were back to school on day one in late August, the decision was still going to be to have those devices at home for a resource for the students. Originally, when we did this back in April, we thought those would come back to the schools for use in classrooms. We obviously are not doing that. This purchase will be funded 100% from various federal grants related to COVID-19. And in the update this week, I gave you the summary of the different grants. We're already at 2.8 million of grants. We'll be finding out, I believe, Friday what our allocation is from Oakland County Health Department. I expect our total grants, after that's added in, will exceed $4 million, which is a significant amount of money. And with this purchase, we would have committed less than 2 million between technology and other COVID related cleaning supplies, gloves, masks. You could just think of everything we're using and having to purchase and plan for. So our recommendation, this is information and hopefully an action, is to award the purchase of these Chromebooks and charging carts to CDW in the total amount of $351,450. Just to reiterate again, this is 100% funded from federal grants, which have restricted uses. We cannot use these grants for things like teacher salaries, administrator salaries, teaching supplies. They're restricted to things dealing with COVID, like virtual instruction and the like. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer anything you have. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Are there any board members with questions about this? I don't see any. Is there Trustee Klein?
Yeah. What are the students who will be getting these laptops using right now?
This will be, Mr. Klein, what we've done is these 4,000 Chromebooks that were approved back in April were for the classrooms. So this is we've had to take some of those from the classrooms and send them to homes. So it's going to backfill some of those that we've sent home, and then and fill additional needs in classroom. We weren't able to put Chromebooks in all of our classrooms based on the quantities we originally had to approve in April. So it's a combination of for the classrooms when kids come back, and some of these going home. Kids at home, they've been supplied with either Chromebooks or laptops. They have them, but we're having to take them from what was intended to be in the classrooms. So we're kind of backfilling these. These will be probably till January till we receive these.
When the kids do come back to the classrooms, what happens to the laptops that they currently have at home?
The expectation is they would stay at home for a resource to use for homework and the like for the school year.
That's fantastic. So even beyond COVID, we're making sure that each one of our children is technologically up to date and on par with the students.
Right. So that decision was made and recommended from cabinet and communicated to the board before we knew we would be where we are today. This was way back, and I think May or June, Dr. Hitchcock, we thought, we have adequate funding from the federal government and the state government to do something like this. And we need to have the resources for these students that need it. In addition to things like close to 1,000 hotspots that we've sent home. No one has done something like this.
I think that's great. I remember being in high school and having to go somewhere else to use a computer because I didn't have one at home. And I've heard of, lots of kids who have to go to the library all the time. And this puts us on par and lets us compete with districts where the kids don't have to worry about lacking tech at home. That's great. Thank you for your help.
Do any other board members have questions?
I just want to bring up I'm sorry, go ahead.
Trustee Bailey, go ahead.
Yeah, so I just want to ask about hotspots. How are the kids with the hotspots?
How are they doing?
Every student have Chromebook as well as hotspots, correct?
Yeah, we had probably 900 to 1,000 households that received hotspots. Not a Chromebook per child, but really a Chromebook, or excuse me, a hotspot per every 3 children, give or take. So per household, generally, unless you have a significant number of children, we would send second one home.
Okay. And how is that working out? No issues.
I can't. I mean, there's always going to be some issues, of course, and Jim might be able to speak better to it. I'm sure. I don't really know the teachers. The teachers could probably say there's always communication issues. I know we have people on this call right now who are having communication issues with a hard connection through Comcast. But Jim, have you anything you want to share about how the hotspots are going in terms of your tech support you're having?
So far, so good. We've got a little bit under 900 that are out there right now. And we started NWEA testing this week. And we did last week tests with the hotspots offsite. We kind of drove around the city with a hotspot and a laptop and just ran the NWEA test and Zoom at the same time. And both of them worked. So far, so good. We get a couple calls here and there about, one that's malfunctioning. We just kind of walk them through reset, or we've gotten Sprint on the phone and said, okay, what do we do to reset this, fully? But otherwise, yeah, so far so good. They're doing really well.
Perfect. Thank you, Jim.
I want to just point out really quick that, as I mentioned in the Friday update and maybe somewhere else to you, that there will be some other purchases of technology coming to you in the next few weeks. We're working very closely with Oakland Schools and Jim for things, again, that will be 100% funded from the grants. For example, upgrading some of our Promethean boards in the high schools, looking at sound field amplification, or really like speaker systems in classrooms. So when teachers come back one day and they have masks on, the kids will be able to hear them better. Headphones for students to use with their computers. So you're going to see several new purchases that you haven't seen before that'll be coming to you again, that are only possible because we have these grant funds.
Okay, any other board members have questions? I don't see any. Is there any objection from the board to bringing this as an action item tonight? In that case, Trustee Goodfriend, can you please read the action item? It would be, I believe, 7E.
I've got it if necessary.
Please read it.
Sorry?
This is on
She
the
said, please read it.
Technology.
Yes.
Okay. Resolved that the Oak Park Board of Education approves the recommended purchase of Chromebooks and charging and management cards be awarded to CDW government in the amount of $351,450. This purchase will be funded entirely from federal grants related to COVID-19, including ESSER, Ed, Equity and Gear, and CRF grants.
Support.
Moved by Trustee Goodfriend, supported by Trustee Smith. Are there any questions from the board on the motion? Okay, Ms. Greer, can you please call the roll?
Bailey?
Yes.
Cochran?
Yes.
Goodfriend?
Yes.
Hoda?
Yes.
Lunkins?
Yes.
Klein?
Yes.
And Smith?
Yes.
Okay, motion passes unanimously. We'll move on. communications and addenda. Are there any additional communications and addenda from the administration? Okay, anything from the community? Are there any community members who would like to speak at this time? Please type in the chat. And any additional comments from members of the board? In that case, I will, if there's no objection, I will adjourn the meeting. Trustee Lunkins, when's our next meeting? Okay, I believe our next scheduled meeting
October 12th.
October 12th, 7 p.m. Have a good night, everyone.
Good night.
Meeting is adjourned at 9:02.
Night,
Good
everyone.
night, everyone. Thank
Good
you.
night.
Good night. Thank you.
Enjoy the debate.
Yes, ma'am.